Let's welcome Iris.
So, hello everyone on the webinar and out here. Could we just take a moment of silence to link up with everyone? Restoring the plan on Earth. The big question is, how are we doing? Can you relate to this? Probably we all can, especially if we watch news on a regular basis. Recently, I read that depression is now the #1 cause of disability worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. This is called Ultimate Return by the artist Yanash. New waves of energy are surrounding the Earth, preparing us for a great evolutionary jump and a deep-rooted awakening. We are on the threshold of a new age of light that marks a reversal in direction from an outgrown focus on material values to a release, a freedom, a liberation, more favorable for the expansion of planetary consciousness. As the vibration frequencies in the cosmos automatically change with the precession of the planets and the stars, human consciousness adapts and evolves as well. The Ageless Wisdom teachings signal the imminent return of the world teacher, and we're told the major required preparation is a world at peace. However, DK says that peace must be based on an educated goodwill, which will lead inevitably to right human relations and therefore to the establishment, figuratively speaking, of lines of light between nation and nation, group and group, religion and religion, and human and human. We know humanity plays a vital part. 2025 is rapidly approaching when the elders of our planet will meet to review our progress of the past 100 years. And decisions will be made in preparation for the next century. This is a defining moment for humanity. What more can we do to aid these preparations? Perhaps one of our greatest opportunities lies in assisting the work of the United Nations. As the interdependence of the world is more forcibly realized and through an almost constant stream of crises brought before it, the UN is coming into a markedly more significant role. Considered by many around the world to be a beacon of hope, the UN still continues to be humanity's most far-sighted and significant undertaking. It represents a fact of our oneness, a reflection of the highest achievement in consciousness marked by humankind as a whole at this time. This is the first planetary focus at the human level where the nerve endings of all humanity join, where the qualities, characteristics, different attributes, and essences of all human groups merge and blend. So at least symbolically, we can see how the UN could be considered the center which we call the human race, referenced in the Great Invocation, and perhaps the first temple of humanity. The UN Charter begins, "We the peoples." It's a living organism of all of us. UN headquarters is located in New York City. Its keynote, it's one of the planetary centers. Its keynote is "I light the way." Think of the Statue of Liberty holding up the torch. The sixth ray of idealism is the force expressing itself through New York. The second largest office site of the UN is in Geneva, another of the 5 planetary centers. We're told Geneva is yet to be fully expressing the second ray of love wisdom. Her keynote is, "I seek to fuse, to blend, and serve." In 1945, after the war, 3 significant events took place. 1, the world teacher announced he would reappear, providing right human relations were created in the world. 2, the Great Invocation was given out to humanity. 3, the final version of the UN Charter passed unanimously. We're told the avatar of synthesis overshadows the General Assembly, and that's the image on the right. He is at the apex of a triangle with the spirit of peace and the Lord Buddha, and is closely related to the will aspect of divinity, working to produce at-one-ment, unification, and fusion. We're also told that he can come no closer than the mental plane and will be overshadowing the coming world teacher. He can only channel his energies through mass consciousness or through a group conscious entity, such as the spiritual hierarchy, the United Nations, or humanity. The new group of world servers is the focal point of his efforts and the agent through which he distributes energy. And we know that the UN is filled with the new group of world servers, whether they know it or not, and infused with the love of the hierarchy and the Christ. Emerging from the most inclusive process in UN history, the 2030 Agenda and its 17 goals are an agreed set of priorities for the global common good. This was enacted in 2015. This People's Plan, as it's called, seeks to transform our world in a significant way. It has the potential to become a focus for the forces of goodwill throughout all sectors of society. In addition to ending poverty, fighting inequalities, and protecting the planet, the SDGs are also an urgent call to shift the world onto a more sustainable path, thereby enabling all humankind to enjoy a future of peace and prosperity on a healthy planet. These goals apply to all countries, rich and poor, and middle income alike. Each is expected to take ownership and establish a national framework for achieving them. Yet meeting them is beyond the capability of one nation. They will require the contribution of you and me and everyone. This is a universal call to action, an all hands on deck emergency, as in emerging. The UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, seen in the photo, says that in this 3rd year of global efforts to implement the goals, there is hope and encouraging signs of momentum. The SDGs have captured the imagination of leaders and general public alike. Member states are showing strong ownership, aligning their plans and strategies accordingly. She has listed 5 imperatives to move the SDGs beyond promise to practice. And I've simplified them into a to-do list that we can all implement in our daily lives. Number 1, don't forget me. We must be guided by the principle of leaving no one behind. This commitment to inclusiveness and equality is at the heart of the 2030 Agenda. It is also our best long-term strategy to prevent conflict and maintain peace and security. I'm in that category, along with more than half of the people in this room who are women. along with the women are the youth and all who are experiencing marginalization and discrimination. Those furthest behind must be our top priority. Number 2, shift to sustainable. We must shift to sustainable consumption and production patterns. We need to address the tensions between needs and wants. In a growing population of 7.5 billion people. 3, put our heads together. We must learn to think in an integrated way and work collaboratively with all sectors. Cohesive, aligned decision-making is a must for the SDG era. 4, share and spread the money around. We must mobilize our resources through all possible channels, public, private, domestic, and international. The financing requirements for realizing the SDGs are considerable. We know there is more than enough resources and currency in the world, and the means of its distribution are in place. The problem lies in freeing it from the centralization of politics and capitalism. Once we solve the economic problem, there may be no more need for wars. 5, do what's needed for the future. We must adapt our institutions to meet the greater demands of a new paradigm of international development. This requires us to go beyond institutional barriers and intellectual silos. The UN development system must also adapt, and so must we at all levels. We're creating a web of resilience through right relations, establishing those lines of light between nations, religions, groups, and each other. Humanity's plan is that of creating a safety net where no one is left behind. Because when we create a global net surrounding the planet, there is no behind and there's no forward. This is a plan in which we all have each other's backs, and structures are in place should anyone need assistance, where no one can fall through the cracks. That's what we're creating, the SDGs. This is a new way of living built on the golden rule rather than the GDP, in which we bring our spiritual vision into our national governments, their economic budgets, and all workings to bring about security and dignity for all. Our task is to take personal and collective action to weave the net where we stand, within our families, our groups, and our communities. In Problems of Humanity, page 169, spirituality is essentially the establishing of right human relations, the promotion of goodwill, and finally the establishing of a true peace on earth. It's a way of life in agreement with all beings, nature, and the universe. No longer should the word spiritual be solely associated with belonging to the churches or the world religions, because it never did. Right now, humanity's united focus on fulfilling the SDGs may be the most spiritual work in the truest sense of the word on this planet. The circle of colors on the left is a symbol for the SDGs, their 17 goals. Not only do we need to work together to meet these goals, the SDGs themselves are an interconnected network of interdependent, indivisible, and mutually reinforcing targets, the DNA of the 2030 Agenda. Triangles underlies everything. our work in meditation is interconnected with the SDGs and crucial for their success. If we build the proper network etherically, then the work of the people of goodwill will be truly effective. For the triangle's work transmits goodwill or love in action, light, and eventually the will to good. Quite often, the key to success in meeting one goal will involve tackling issues more commonly associated with another. It's probably impossible to separate them. For example, let's take a look at the current refugee crisis. An unprecedented 69 million people globally, and it keeps growing every year, have been forced from home by conflict and persecution or climate displacement. On an average, 1 in every 113 people is now displaced, equal to the size of France. That's 1 person every 3 seconds, and 1 out of every 2 refugees is a child. The solution entails Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal 15, life on land. Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Not to mention, most importantly, number 2, zero hunger. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. Number 4, quality education. And number 3, good health and well-being. People fleeing persecution and conflict have been granted asylum in foreign lands for thousands of years. The UN agency that helps refugees is UNHCR, and also known as the UN Refugee Agency, which emerged in the wake of World War II to help Europeans displaced by this conflict. Current UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was High Commissioner of the UNHCR for 10 years prior to taking office. He cites the inspiration he received from the creativity, commitment, and resilience of refugees as his reason for seeking the office of Secretary General. Data, statistics, probability. Crucial to the success of humanity meeting these goals, aside from spiritual will, are strong government systems and, in particular, strong statistical systems that can measure and incentivize progress. It's the kind of best practices that Stephen Dyna was mentioning in his presentation that it really is being funneled through one big clearinghouse and made available to the global community. Never before has anything of this scale ever been attempted. That's why it takes everyone. It's quite amazing. We are truly measuring humanity's pulse, our heart rate, if you will. What kind of impact are we making in realizing the culture of peace, culture of heart? Are we suffering from heart disease? It's time to transform, to heal. Statistics, numbers, and figures tell the story of our lives, how well we live, how well we take care of ourselves, and how well we take care of ourselves, each other, and the environment. This includes financial flow, which ensures necessary resources get where they need to be and how the goals will be financed. Data also has the potential to influence positive change by helping to distinguish between facts and fiction or fear-mongering. This chart from the Center for Disease Control is interesting in that it shows how many Americans are killed annually by Islamic jihadist immigrants. 2, far right-wing terrorists. 5, all Islamic jihadist terrorists, including US citizens. 9, armed toddlers. 21, Lightning, 31. Lawnmowers, 69. Being hit by a bus, 264. Falling out of bed, 737. Being shot by another American, 11,737. All are based on a 10-year average from 2005 to 2014, aside from the armed toddlers, which was just 2015. Actually, Americans are more likely to win a lottery jackpot than being killed by a refugee terrorist. Let's consider this data in relation to American military spending, which is currently about $700 billion for 2018. John Mueller, a foreign policy expert at The Ohio State University and co-author of the book Chasing Ghosts, The Policing of Terrorism, wrote in an email interview with Business Insider, quote, "I once asked this guy at the National Institutes of Health how much we should spend on preventing a disease that kills 6 per year. And he looked at me like I was crazy." He was referring to another study done in 2016 by the Cato Institute that found similar results to this chart. People do not want war. People yearn for security, peace, and happiness. This was clearly evident on March 20th, the annual International Day of Happiness, at a recent UN meeting entitled Happiness at the Center of Government Work, hosted by the Global Happiness Coalition founding members Costa Rica, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Portugal, Slovenia, and United Arab Emirates. It also provided an overview of the 2018 Global Happiness Report, Policy Report, and the World Happiness Report, which this year focused on migration. In the report is a quote by Robert F. Kennedy. He says, "GDP, gross national product, measures everything in short except that which makes life worthwhile." This growing global happiness movement reflects a mix of inspiring idealism and down-to-earth realism. Governments are increasingly using indicators of happiness to inform their policy-making decisions, as this data can provide a valuable and productive opportunity to look at more sustainable ways to improve life on this planet. This measure of well-being also seems to be an attempt to gauge peace in the world. Measured by Gallup surveys from 2015 to 2017, the #1 happiest country in the world is Finland. Yes, Finland. The rest of the top 10 in order of overall happiness are Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, Netherlands, Canada, New Zealand, Sweden, and Australia. The US dropped 4 spots down last year, ranking 18th and falling in part because of the ongoing epidemics of obesity, substance abuse, and untreated depression. The world community is built with human hands and feet, and therein lies the beauty of the construction. It's from New Era Community number 156. There are an abundance of positive, inspiring studies and initiatives going on at the UN and around the world. Every day I hear about new ones. Here are 2 that came to my attention recently. Measuring Global Citizenship Education, a collection of practices and tools by the Brookings Institute, is, I believe, perhaps one of the more promising studies and having the greatest potential because it's geared for young people, the next generation. And it's focused on values, being an agent of change, building knowledge, and taking positive action. That's what global citizenship is all about. It's about oneness, recognizing our oneness. The second one is a UN publication which calls for urgent action on goal number 7, which is crucial for achieving almost all the SDGs. That's energy. It includes 27 policy briefs by over 50 organizations from a full range of stakeholders and proposes a new global agenda for accelerated action, kind of like a turbo on the SDG 7, so that we might achieve universal energy access by 2030 and meet this target. Two goals have been coming up for me more than most lately. The first goal is number 12, responsible consumption and production. Achieving economic growth and sustainable development requires that we urgently reduce our ecological footprint. Agriculture is the biggest user of water worldwide, irrigation now claiming close to 70% of all fresh water for human use. The efficient management of our shared natural resources and the way we dispose of toxic waste and pollutants are important targets to achieve this goal. Recycling and reducing waste is equally important, as is supporting countries like ours to move towards more sustainable patterns of consumption. Both. This includes food. A large share of the world's population is still consuming far too little food to even meet their basic needs, while 1/3 of the world's food is wasted. 1.3 billion tons, enough to feed 3 billion people, or 10 times the population of the United States. Goal 14, life below water. Here are some of the facts about the plastic in our oceans from Oceanus. There is an estimated 200 million tons of plastic littering our oceans. The majority of this plastic debris ultimately finds its way into one of these massive swirling garbage patches. While plastic is not biodegradable, it is photodegradable. Sunlight breaks it down into ever smaller pieces called microplastics. Over 90% of plastic pollution is made up of microplastics smaller than your fingernail. These microplastics often absorb toxic chemicals like DDT and PCB. Unable to distinguish many plastics from food, many animals starve to death, their bellies choked by plastic. Others survive just long enough to contaminate the food chain. Our oceans could well be void of life within the next 2 generations if nothing is done to change this. Hindered by a stale way of thinking, cleanup has been virtually non-existent. So I'd like to give you some decomposition rates from that little chart on the lower left. Banana peel, 2 to 3 weeks. Paper, 5 to 10 weeks. Cigarette butt, 10 to 15 years. Aluminum can, 200 to 500 years. Glass bottle, 1 million years. Styrofoam, never. Plastic bottle, never. Fishing line, never. Plastic bags, never. Plastic is not biodegradable. Thanks to recent innovations in science and technology, hope is on the horizon. There's also an increasingly abundant, innovative news about plastic too. Positive news can be found at positive.news, if you'd like to check that out. Figuratively speaking, Mother Earth could say, #MeToo. Woman is considered as the source and guiding force of creation. The indigenous community recognizes this. Quote, all of nature, minerals, animals, plants, rivers, mountains, humans, planets, stars, and the invisible world are not just resources. They are our family, and therefore it is essential to live together in harmony. After watching Robertson and Justin's moving films about death and dying, it was taken that it seemed one consistent download the near-death experiencers, or NDEers, got was the importance of love above all. So from Robert's compilation, Understanding Death, here's what some of them said. What I learned there is that the most important thing is loving while you're alive. That's why we're here. The most important thing we have are our relationships with other people. It all comes down to caring and compassion and love for your fellow men. Love is the answer. It's the answer to everything. Well, to me, a lot of things people think of as important are just not very important. I find that love, giving love, is sufficiently important. In my opinion, there are two things in life which keep a person going, or I would say, which are important. To me, they are the most important things, and that is love and knowledge. The NDEers seem to have embraced the messages of the two great teachers, the great brothers, the Christ and the Buddha, and came back with a new chip after this experience they underwent. To have such a deep understanding of love wisdom is a blessing. I find this very hopeful for us and for the planet. And I even wonder if it's possible a planet might go through a near-death experience too. The star of the mother of the world is the planet Venus. This new era we are entering is the era of the mother of the world. She's its representative. May we recognize the divine universal mother in all women. We've been told it's time we recognize also that the one mother of both lords is not a symbol, but a great manifestation of the feminine origin in which is revealed the spiritual mother of the two brothers, Christ and the Buddha. She was the one who taught and ordained them for achievement. UN Deputy Secretary General Ms. Mohammed said again, speaking on the SDGs, quote, we must unleash the potential of half our populations by ensuring women's full equality and protection from violence. We know that through women's meaningful participation in all aspects of life, we can increase food security, better address climate change, see great resources flow to social protection, unlock trillions for the global economy, and ensure more sustainable peace and security. Okay, I'm almost at the end, and so let's go over our to-do list of 5 imperatives to move the SDGs from promise to practice, which we can all implement. 1, don't forget me. 2, shift to sustainable. 3, put our heads together. And I believe this includes meditation. 4, share and spread the money around. 5, do what's needed for the future. I'd like to acknowledge all the good service work being done by meditators and spiritual groups around the world, especially SRI and the Ask Project. Your dedication and steadfastness is laudable. Here are a few other meditative incentives supporting the UN in which you are all warmly invited to participate. The 2025 initiative. And right now, its new moon meetings, by the way, focus on a different SDG each month. The Aquarian Age Community, the Spiritual Caucus at the UN, Intuition in Service, and there are many more. Tactica adversa. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this phrase. I learned of this principle a few months ago from Helena Rorick's Letters, Volume 1. Quote, Tactica adversa is the tactical exhausting of the adverse. Precisely when the light forces wish to fulfill some plan on Earth, they make allowances for all possibilities, envisioning even the worst circumstances, so that success can be guaranteed even under the worst conditions. Then every betterment of the condition is already an unexpected plus. Thus, from the worst is derived a benefit. When such tactics are applied, the enemies often contribute to the success. We can see that. We're told tactica adversa is used to arouse the consciousness, that it becomes necessary to take things to the point of absurdity. Otherwise, we won't wake up. Stephen Dyna was referring to this in his presentation too, without naming it. We're currently seeing this work out in world events such as the Global Women's March, the March for Our Lives, and the #MeToo campaign. Can the demand of humanity be strong enough to evoke the rider on the white horse seen in this painting by Nicholas Roerich, entitled Light Conquers Darkness? Can we restore the plan on Earth? We're told the mother is beauty, the world is self-sacrifice. And by these two fundamentals, the gates are opened. It's from The Leaves of Moria's Garden, Book 2. We need to keep looking forward in these times, looking for and following the light of beauty that already exists. Perhaps there's a reason why we only have eyes on one side of our head. Remember Lot's wife, who turned to salt when she looked back, longing for what was. Beauty is perceived in and through the radiance of the soul. Beauty creates a portal through which inhaling the scent of heavenly realms becomes possible. I'd like to close with this passage from Living Discipleship Initiative. The light that is in me is but a spark of the glory that's about to unfold as we tread the upward path of evolution. Together, we light the light that paves the way into the new world. Together, we serve the plan of evolution, the hierarchy of light, the human race, and all other creatures who embody the one life of Earth. Together, we embrace the wonders of life on this planet, making visible the invisible, and in so doing, we restore the plan on Earth. This painting is called Soul by Art Spellings. Thank you so much.